Batman has dedicated his life to an endless crusade, a war on all criminals in the name of his murdered parents, who were taken from him when he was just a child. Since that tragic night, he has trained his body and mind to near physical perfection to be a self-made superhero. He's developed an arsenal of technology that would put most armies to shame. And he's assembled teams of his fellow heroes, like the Justice League and the Outsiders. In the name of his murdered parents, Bruce Wayne wages eternal war on the criminals of his city. He's vengeance. He's the Knight. He's Batman.
More than a butler, Alfred Pennyworth is the Dark Knight's squire, expert helpmate in every field from sewing to shotguns. The Batman's career can never have happened without the assistance of Alfred, who keeps the Batcave in working order and maintains the public illusion that Bruce Wayne is nothing more than a billionaire playboy. Born and raised in England, Alfred chose to follow his mother into the theater rather than become a butler for the Wayne family of Gotham City, a job that both his father and grandfather had performed with distinction. After stints as both a soldier and actor, Alfred prepared to marry a young woman, then had his heart broken when he learned she had not been faithful to him. Soon, Alfred's father passed away, and Alfred chose to abandon the stage to fulfill his father's obligation to Thomas and Martha Wayne as their family butler. 2 years later, Thomas and Martha fell victim to a mugger. Alfred and physician Leslie Tompkins raised the Waynes' young son Bruce in Wayne Manor, after a maze of paperwork shielded the case from the influence of Gotham Child Services. When an adult Bruce decided to become the vigilante Batman, Alfred became an aide to him in the subsequent string of Robins. Alfred briefly left Batman's service, but soon returned after trips to Antarctica in England. Since then, he has survived the destruction of Wayne Manor during a cataclysmic earthquake that returned Gotham City into a lawless no man's land, and his own near-fatal bout with the Clinch virus. Because he knew Bruce as a boy, Alfred is perhaps the only person in the world utterly unfazed by Batman's grim facade. Although not truly immortal, the international terrorist Ra's al Ghul was one of the most long-lived men on the planet. In Arabic, his name translates as the demon's head, a Finid name for someone so sinister. Ra's al Ghul's primary purpose during his extended life was to restore the Earth's ecological balance. Unfortunately, this seemingly altruistic goal led to him committing global genocide to reduce mankind's polluting numbers. For centuries, Ra's al Ghul maintained his existence by periodically immersing himself in Lazarus pits, holes filled with alchemical mix of acids and poisons, excavated above the electromagnetic ley lines crisscrossing the Earth. Following his emergence from the liquid in the Lazarus pits, Ra's al Ghul would for a short time be consumed with insane fury. For this reason, Ra's demanded solitude when rejuvenating himself. Ra's al Ghul's schemes to restore Earth to an Eden-like splendor have been thwarted time and again by Batman. The Dark Knight first met the enigmatic eco-terrorist when Ra's al Ghul, desiring an heir for his crime empire, kidnapped Robin in an attempt to coerce the Dark Knight into marrying his daughter Talia. Naturally, Batman refused, and although he had deep feelings for the beautiful Talia, he continued to oppose Ra's al Ghul's schemes. Ra's al Ghul continued to seek a suitable heir, even considering the muscle-bound terrorist Bane, before Talia spurned this potential suitor. The dejected Bane then set about sabotaging Ra's al Ghul's Lazarus pits to get revenge. James Gordon, his wife Barbara, and their 2 children moved to Gotham City from Chicago, where he established a reputation for honesty and an infamously corrupt police department. However, Gordon's dedication took its toll on his marriage, and Barbara left him. One of Jim's first assignments was hunting down the urban legend known as Batman. Despite his aversion to Batman's vigilantism, the chain-smoking Gordon became a close ally of the Dark Knight. Gordon eventually became police commissioner, forging one of the finest departments in the country. He also fell in love with and married Sergeant Sarah Essen. Gordon refused to leave Gotham when the city was struck by an earthquake, and with a few loyal officers, sought to maintain a semblance of law and order. Tragically, Sarah was murdered by the Joker, while trying to save the lives of Gotham's dozens of kidnapped children. Gordon finally retired after 20 years as a police officer, though he returned as commissioner several months after the Infinite Crisis. His daughter Barbara continues to fight crime in Metropolis and across the world.
Angered by the power and corruption of multinational corporations, 12-year-old Lonnie Machin donned a costume that increased his height and took to the streets as Anarchy. Anarchy murdered several CEOs and celebrities, spray painting their bodies with his a symbol after he killed them. Batman soon identified the assassin from clues in a Gotham City newspaper that linked the murders to Anarchy. Astonished to discover that Anarchy was just a boy, Batman apprehended him, and Machin was incarcerated at the Gotham Juvenile Corrections Hall. Machin later became the computer hacker Money Spider and transferred millions of dollars from the accounts of wealthy corporations to third world countries. Batman's partner, Robin, determined Money Spider's link to Anarchy, and Machin's plans for global change were thwarted. Undaunted, and using a special device of his own creation, Machin fused the two sides of his brain, increasing his intelligence to superhuman levels. After toying with Batman and Robin, Anarchy learned that he had been adopted, and that his natural mother was a Vegas showgirl, and his father was the Joker. This only furthered Anarchy's resolve to wreak havoc on the industrialized world, in the hope of triggering worldwide revolution. Despite his criminal history with Earth's defenders, most notably Batman, Anarchy has worked alongside heroes including Robin, Green Lantern, and Young Justice against some of their greatest enemies, including Clarion, the Witch Boy and Darkseid. Superman's greatest enemy, Lex Luthor, may be the most gifted man alive, but rather than use his supreme intellect and skills for the betterment of mankind, the sociopath has continually sought power and influence without regard for the pain and suffering he causes. Lex appeared in Metropolis and built his technology company, LexCorp, into a powerhouse. Financial success led to political power, and he was considered the city's most powerful figure. Then came the day that Superman appeared in the skies above Metropolis and turned Lex's world upside down. Superman openly accused Luthor of being a criminal mastermind rather than a benefactor of mankind. Luthor soon swore to bring down the last son of Krypton. Over the years, he has used his power and influence to plague the Man of Steel time and again. When Lois Lane exposed his criminal dealings, Luthor triggered devices hidden within Metropolis that destroyed the city. Superman and his fellow heroes rebuilt Metropolis, and the battle between Superman and Luthor continued. Realizing the need to muzzle the press, Luthor bought and then sold the Daily Planet to Perry White on condition that Lois Lane killed any single story of his choosing. Feeling safe from exposure, Luthor ran for President of the United States to gain the power needed to bring Superman down. Surprisingly, he served the country's interests well, strengthening or forging relationships with many nations from Atlantis to Russia. Luthor's presidential power still could not bring about the end of Superman and his costumed friends. When an asteroid neared Earth, Luthor detected kryptonite radiation and used that to try and turn the public against the Man of Steel. He even sent costume champions after Superman, but this gambit also failed. Finally, he donned a LexCorp war suit and tried to take down not only Superman, but Batman as well. His efforts were in vain, and his deception was made public. Driven from the presidency, Luthor was thought to have died, but limped to freedom. An angry, vengeful man. Growing up in Gotham City can be complicated, especially when you're a kid who's obsessed with Batman and Robin. After he deduced the identities of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson, a self-made hero in every sense of the word, Tim took on the role of Robin after attempting to convince Dick Grayson to become Batman's sidekick again, following the death of Jason Todd. In Tim's mind, Batman needed a Robin to stay true to himself and his mission. Although Tim didn't intend to take up the mantle for himself, he was more than happy to do what needed to be done. Edward Nygma found his ticket to the big time as an employee of Wayne Industries, securing the role of advisor to Philip Kane, Bruce Wayne's uncle, who ran the Wayne Corporation when Bruce left to train to become the Batman, Nigma began plotting his takeover of the city. An expert strategist with genius-level knowledge of history, it was not long before Nigma adopted the guise of a supervillain, calling himself the Riddler. As an orphan growing up on the streets, Selina Kyle became a thief to survive. After perfecting her skills as a cat burglar, she now wears a catsuit to steal from the corrupt and richest Catwoman. Unlike most criminals, Catwoman walks the line between good and evil. With occasional acts of heroism between heists, Catwoman is a master martial artist and acrobat. As stealthy as a ninja, she's also an expert at breaking and entering. Her bullwhip is her main weapon, alongside claws she uses to scale buildings and scratch enemies. She also flirts with her opponents to distract them, especially Batman. Born on the island of Santa Prisca, the boy who would become Bane was raised within the confines of his nation's cruelest prison, where he honed his mind by reading any books he could get his hands on. After decades of imprisonment, he was chosen for an experiment testing a super steroid called Venom. Not only did Venom work, but it also gave Bane the strength to escape. He then set his sights on Gotham City, a place of which he had heard many legends, with one goal in mind: break Batman. No name strikes terror into the hearts of Gotham City's citizens, quite like the Joker. In a city overrun with larger-than-life criminals, the always-laughing villain stands alone, a complete psychopath with no moral compass whatsoever. The Joker, whose real name and identity remain completely unknown, is characterized by his chalk-white skin, green hair and a permanent Richter's grin stretched across his face. But there isn't a single thing funny about this particular clown, who only finds humor in the suffering of others. The Scarecrow constantly proves to be a dangerous threat to the Dark Knight, not due to physical strength, but to the emotional and psychological damage his toxins can cause. In fact, Scarecrow tends to shy away from physical confrontations and instead lets his victims fall prey to their own waking nightmares. A doctor of the deadliest caliber, the Scarecrow's horrific acts don't stem from a villainous desire for power or money, but from an unbreakable urge to learn and hone his craft, mastery over fear itself. Basil Karlo was a famous actor, known primarily for his roles in horror films. However, when replaced as the lead in a movie, he went mad with rage. His life began to take a strange path when he injected himself with a formula that altered his body completely, making him a dangerous shapeshifter made of living clay who can change his physical form however he chooses, with the ability to adopt the appearance of anyone or anything. Clayface has become one of Batman's most powerful enemies. Upon his father's death, college student Jean-Paul Valley learns that he had been genetically altered and trained since birth by a secret society as the Order of St. Dumas. They then activate his psychological conditioning, forcing him to become their most elite enforcer, Azrael. While on a mission, Azrael crosses paths with Batman and soon turns on the Order to join with the Dark Knight. Later, when Bruce Wayne is paralyzed by Bane, Bruce asks Jean-Paul to become Batman for some time. Jean-Paul defeats Bane, but soon Jean-Paul goes off the rails, shutting out Robin and letting an innocent man die at the hands of the villain Abattoir. This forces Bruce Wayne to once again take back the mantle of the Bat. After being saved by Batman on the night he returns from his retirement, Carrie Kelly Ells determined to help the Dark Knight. Spending her lunch money to purchase a Robin salt, she sets out to track Dawn the superhero and became his protege and crime-fighting partner. Shortly thereafter, Carrie finds Batman in the middle of a brawl with the mutant leader and successfully saves the Dark Knight from near death, proving herself capable in the role. Batman then accepts her as his newest Robin, and although he's reluctant to do so, her skills and dedication make her a worthy sidekick. Young Tommy Elliot was a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, who also grew up in wealth and privilege. However, Tommy soon became deeply jealous and resented Bruce once his parents were tragically killed, seeing Bruce as getting the independence and wealth Tommy so desperately desired. Eventually becoming a surgeon, Tommy's resentment for Bruce continued to fester and grow over the years. When the Riddler discovered that Bruce Wayne is really Batman, he approached Dr. Elliot with the secret. But when the two realized they shared a hatred for Wayne, they joined forces, wrapping his face in bandages to hide his identity. Elliot manipulated many of Batman's greatest supervillains in a grand conspiracy to defeat him, hence his chosen identity of Hush. The Penguin is an eccentric criminal mastermind known for his shady business dealings. Born into the wealthy Cobblepot family, Oswald was sent overseas for school as a boy. When his family hit hard times, Cobblepot immersed himself in a criminal education on the streets of London. Years later, he re-emerged as the Penguin, a black market arms dealer in facilitating the illegal financial activities that fund much of the Gotham City's underworld. A prominent and well-educated district attorney, Harvey Dent fought valiantly to uphold the law and make the city a better place. In any other city, it would have worked, not in Gotham City, a place where greed and corruption stretch from the depths of Crime Alley to the shimmering heights of the mayor's office. Dent's spiral into the city's madness came swiftly after a criminal threw acid into his face, leaving half of it horribly scarred. Soon the name Harvey Dent and all the good it stood for was lost, and the criminal to face rose from the darkness. Slade Wilson is a mercenary, an assassin for hire with no qualms about crossing lines to get the job done, no matter where those lines are drawn. A formidable operative for the United States military, Colonel Slade Wilson agreed to undergo an experimental process that increased his mental and physical abilities to superhuman levels. Rather than continue his career as a soldier, Slade became the masked mercenary Deathstroke. This decision resulted in his wife leaving him and his son Joseph being permanently injured, as well as the death of his son Grant, who sought to emulate Slade. By day, Barbara Gordon is the bookish daughter of Police Commissioner Jim Gordon. By night, Barbara dons a cape and cowl as Batgirl, committed to justice like her father, while her utility belt is equipped with batrongs and other crime-fighting gadgets. Her greatest tools are her brilliant mind and her unwavering determination. Batgirl is an expert martial artist and gymnast, trained in part by Batman, who's extremely athletic and agile. Her eidetic memory, heightened intelligence, and advanced knowledge of computers makes her a natural leader and skilled crime fighter. Dick Grayson has made a name for himself over the years, and on more than one occasion throughout his valiant life, Grayson has proven himself to be one of the most resilient and brilliant crime fighters in the world, and a natural leader. As the first Robin, he fought alongside Batman for many years, and later led the Titans as Nightwing. His charisma is as potent as his combat skills, acrobatic flair, and deductive gifts. He is a hero's hero who maintains an infectiously positive outlook, despite facing much tragedy in his life. Victor Zsasz is one of Batman's most ruthless enemies. Zsasz is a serial killer, and his descent into madness began after his parents died. He gambled away their fortune at the Penguin's Iceberg Casino, and when the money ran out, the Penguin suggested he should go and kill himself. As Zsasz was about to do just that, he was attacked by a knife-wielding madman. Zsasz dispatched his assailant and experienced an epiphany. Life was meaningless, but killing made everything comprehensible. He embarked on a murder spree, slaying hundreds and recording each kill with a cut on his body. Poison Ivy is the alter ego taken by Dr. Pamela Lillian Isley, an eco-terrorist and prominent enemy of Batman. She's motivated by an obsession with plants, misandry, botany, and extremist environmentalism with a desire to save the world from the evils of man through any means necessary. A genius scientist and metahuman with hybridized plant DNA, Poison Ivy uses mutant plants, while bending pheromones and toxins from plants and her own bloodstream for her criminal activities. Ivy has also developed a special relationship with fellow villain Harley Quinn, with the two often being depicted as recurring partners in crime, friends and, sometimes, love interests. Born with a rare mutation that made his skin green and scaly and grew his body to grotesque proportions, Waylon Jones was raised by an abusive aunt and bullied relentlessly for his appearance. He briefly worked as a carnival freak under the name Killer Croc, but his misanthropy grew, as did his bestial nature, pushing him to a life of crime. As his physical condition and mental state deteriorate, Killer Croc becomes a more bestial foe, increasingly detached from humanity. Harley Quinn is a character created for the show Batman, the animated series. She first began as the Joker's mole, and then was reckoned to be his former psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum. Quinn eventually became a well-known criminal her own right, frequently working with Poison Ivy on crime sprees.
Dr. Victor Fries was an accomplished cryogenicist whose beloved wife Nora was stricken with a fatal degenerative disease. Fries placed her in suspended animation while searching for a way to cure her. But GothCorp's Ferris Boyle stopped funding the research and Nora's life and pulled the plug, triggering an accident that transformed Fries's body into a cold-blooded form that must always be kept at sub-zero temperatures. At normal room temperature, he will die. Wielding a number of freezing weapons, Mr. Freeze wears a protective cryogenic suit in his quest to somehow restore his wife to full health and avenge her fate, which he partly holds Batman responsible for.
The ventriloquist is a gangster that usually speaks through a puppet named Scarface, which his mental illness leads him to believe is a separate person. His dissociative identity disorder allows him to commit ruthless violent crimes while maintaining a quiet and meek personality, pretending that he is simply Scarface's servant. Despite years of practice, Arnold Wesker is still unable to pronounce the letter B while throwing his voice, instead replacing it with G while fighting Batman. In Batman Year One, Falcone virtually runs the city, with the mayor, city council, and Commissioner Gillian B. Loeb under his influence. However, his power base comes under attack by the new mysterious and upcoming vigilante, Batman. Despite Loeb's desperate attempts to stop him, Batman's attacks on Falcone's organization become even more brazen. Humiliated, Falcone orders Batman killed. Batman is too elusive, however, as he later helps Catwoman attack the Mafia head. Finally, Falcone orders police detective Jim Gordon's wife and child kidnapped to bring him to heel. But the plot is in part foiled by the Gordons, while Batman rescues their child. Eventually, District Attorney Harvey Dent and Jim Gordon's investigations, with some secret assistance by Batman, restore law and order to Gotham. Loeb is forced to resign, and Falcone's power is put under threat by the new opposition he now faces. Soon a serial killer named Holiday appears targeting the city's crime families, with particular attention paid to the Falcone family. While fighting the criminal justice system, Falcone is desperately trying to get a grip on his once powerful empire, and he resorts to hiring what he calls freaks. Falcone's son, Alberto, confessed to all of the Holiday killings, as he wanted his father to accept him into the family business, but it is important to note Harvey and Gilda Dent are at least somewhat responsible for them. Harvey Dent was in fact the initial suspect, and the suspicions directed toward him were in part responsible for the accident in which he became Two-Face. Falcone was killed in the end, shot by Two-Face. Dr. Kirk Langstrom, a scientist specializing in the study of bats, developed an extract intended to give humans the bat's sonar sense and tested the formula on himself because he was becoming deaf. While it worked, it has a horrible side effect. It transformed him gradually into a hideous humanoid bat-like monster. He first clashed with Batman when he tried to steal the chemicals needed to reverse his transformation, but his control over the new animalistic instincts resulting from his bat-like state is tenuous, and Batman is forced to subdue him to administer the antidote. Langstrom later refines his serum, enabling him to retain his human intelligence while in bat form, and allowing himself control over his transformations. He works for a while as a detective and independent crime fighter as Man-Bat, while he and his fiancée, Francine, marry and have a daughter, Rebecca. Eventually, however, his instability returns, and he is left unable to control his transformations. In this condition, he clashes several times with Batman in the Batcave, which he finds by following other bats through the network of caverns. He does not recall its location in human form, and he never knows Batman's secret identity, believing, erroneously, that his daughter is dead, and that Batman is somehow responsible. Although he briefly regains control of his transformations, this appears to have changed. He begins to suspect that his cures missed an element of the serum, and he's losing control of his bat side. He believes he has slaughtered his own wife, son, and daughter. However, both Kirk and Francine are shown to be alive when Talia al Ghul ties up and gags Francine, and then threatens to poison her if Kirk does not give her the Man-Bat formula. After Langstrom gives her the formula, she releases Francine as promised. Talia utilizes the mutagen to turn members of the League of Assassins into Man-Bats. Steppenwolf is a new god who is the younger brother of Hegra, Darkseid's mother, and the uncle of Ux's Darkseid. He is also a member of Darkseid's elite. He leads the military forces of Apocalypse and rides hounds bred for battle. Steppenwolf is one of the earliest survivors of Doomsday, the monster who once killed Superman 245,000 years ago. Steppenwolf takes an Apocalyptian shuttle with Darkseid, Master Mayhem, and a small crew to the planet of Bylon 5. The planet holds delicate natural materials Apocalypse needs for weaponry, material which would be destroyed in the event of an invasion. The forcible marriage of Darkseid to the planet's princess comes to an end when Doomsday attacks. Master Mayhem is swiftly torn apart. Darkseid ignores Steppenwolf's orders to use Omega beams and engages the creature in hand-to-hand combat. Steppenwolf sees that the destruction that has been wrought has doomed the planet and all who live on it. He teleports Darkseid out of harm's way, agreeing with Darkseid not to mention this to anyone. Doomsday escapes by stowing away on the Apocalyptian shuttle. Talia is an occasional lover and enemy of Batman, the most cherished child of Ra's al Ghul, known as the Daughter of the Demon. As a high-ranking member of the League of Assassins, she is sometimes referred to by titles like Talia Head or Talia al Ghul, signifying her status as Daughter of the Demon. For a time she was a key member of LexCorp. Talia was briefly married to Batman, and is also the mother of Damian Wayne, Batman's biological son and the fifth Robin. Jason Peter Todd became the second Robin, sidekick to the superhero Batman, when the previous Robin, Dick Grayson, went on to lead the Teen Titans under the moniker of Nightwing. Jason, originally believing his parents to be deceased, soon discovered that his mother was alive and set out to find her. This journey would lead to his death at the hands of the Joker, Batman's arch-nemesis. Batman carried the guilt of not being able to prevent Jason's death around 4 years. However, it was later discovered that Jason was resurrected, eventually becoming the second Red Hood and assuming a new role as an anti-hero who resembles Batman in many ways, except with a willingness to use lethal force and weapons. Obsessed from a young age with Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, Jarvis Tetch, a brilliant neuroscientist, embraced a delusion that he was the incarnation of a character in the story, the Mad Hatter. Using his hypnotic skills for mesmerism, Tetch as the Mad Hatter has committed many crimes, often themed around the book that inspired him and his love of hats and headgear, going so far as to plant his hats, ranging from pith helmets to bowlers, with mind control chips to amplify his hypnosis skills. Darkseid is a new god and the tyrannical ruler of the planet Apokolips. His ultimate goal is to find and gain control over the anti-life equation, to enslave the multiverse by eliminating all hope and free will in sentient beings. Regarded as one of the most powerful beings in the universe, Darkseid serves as one of Superman's greatest adversaries and the archenemy of the Justice League.